Uh,
Good afternoon, everybody. It is August 26th, and this is Kelly DeLucia, along with George Pottenkulam from Welch Team Keller Williams. We are going to have our weekly market update for the North Florida real estate market, and we'll just go ahead and jump right in. We've got some interesting information. So I'm going to switch over to a screen share with you guys. All right. So let's get to it.
jump right into it.
Yeah.
Love it. Easy.
Easy. Weekly housing trends. So we've been watching the market for every week since the middle of March, and the trend remains the same. As you guys can see, I've put our weekly numbers up here, and we are still down, overall in inventory levels. We are up in pending sales. There's some interesting information that I want to show you guys month over month in a minute. But if we look at where our weekly trends are at, we can still see that those pending numbers are up. Those weekly number of new houses coming in the market are still much lower, which is creating, an overall deficiency. One of the things we talked about a couple weeks ago, and we've been looking at ever since then, was, is anything coming back on the market? We've been seeing a little bit, George and I had some conversations about, were people starting to cancel contracts, feeling a little bit more confident that if they didn't like this house 110%, that they could cancel that contract and go flip to another property. We're really not seeing any major trends there, but it is something that I wanted to pop up and notice, let you guys know we're still tracking. Oop, went too far. So what's really interesting is if we look at our month over month from 2019 to 2020. So we can do a bit deeper dive next week on this, but the more impressive things that I thought would be great to point out to you all would be, look at, we are 23 to 25% up in homes going under contract. We are still under 10% in new sales closing out, but we are up, given everything that's happening and given how far down in inventory we are month over month from 2019 to 2020, when July and August typically have a lot of sales happening. These are really crazy numbers. What do you think, George?
No, definitely. When the fact that we're continuing to sell as much as we are in this crazy time, it's interesting to see how the numbers are kind of supporting that. For as busy as we've been, it's going to be that way for a while.
Right? Like, it's not going to stop here. I'm going to stop you guys for 1 second. I'm trying to switch over. One of the things we were talking about too was the lack of inventory in the MLS. So I was on a call a little bit before we hopped on to this Ask the Agent, and we were talking to some of the top agents in the area, and one of our brokers was discussing how this is the first time in over 15 years that NEFAR, so Northeast Florida Association of Realtors, inventory is down over 30%, which that of course includes commercial property too. So when I go over these numbers, I'm only looking at residential income, condo, and land sales. So of course there's a little bit of, discrepancy in some of those numbers, but I mean, that's crazy. Under 7,000 properties that are searchable on the MLS at any given time. I mean, George, gosh, how many years ago it was up over like 12,000, 13,000?
I would say usually around this time of year, we're looking at that average, 10,000 or higher. The fact that we're sitting 5,000 to 7,000 in active listings on the market is crazy.
It is crazy.
The fact, and that proves to the point. I mean, we have so many different issues that are coming out because of that. Lack of options for buyers who currently own a home, or
right.
We have so many people that just want to buy a new house, but they don't want to list theirs because they know they'll sell quick and they just can't find what they're looking for. So add to that problem of inventory.
Which is definitely something that is a big concern right now. I'm trying to switch us back to that share screen. I want to show you a couple of numbers. So you've got the monthly market back up on your screen, George?
Yep.
Okay. So, if we look and we dive into this, one of the things you just brought up, which is an excellent point, is where do I go? If I put my house on the market, I want to take advantage of the great interest rates that are happening right now. But as you can see, one, lack of inventory, and other sellers that might be hesitant to put their home on the market because they also don't know where they're going to go. We find ourselves in situations where, we could be selling way more homes, if we knew where other people were going to go. I think that's resulted in some off-market sales as well. We've all talked to others out there that, this sales number here, we had 2254 homes sold in August. Now, granted, it's only August 26th. It's Wednesday. We know that sales stack up at the end of the week, especially at the end of the month, especially at the end of the summer, right before school. So I'm sure we'll see maybe 100 or so homes close out over the next few days, but that number is still probably in all likelihood going to be down from 2019 to 2020. But gosh, man, if we knew where people were going, we'd be able to help them out better. So what does that tell us? So this is a national housing problem. We are seeing builders who, may have revised their 2020 goals. We talked to you guys about that 3-4 months ago. Builders not sure how this was going to play out, who now are back looking at their 2020 goals that they set out for themselves in the beginning of the year, who are now at that goal or above that goal. They need to bring new inventory to the market. In our market specifically, builder permits are up. And what happens when people want to build because we have no standing inventory? That leads to price increases. So what are you seeing out there in terms of maybe, homes that a buyer might have been able to get into just a couple months ago that, what's happening with incentives? What's happening with that pricing that you're seeing, George?
Well, so to bring that up, and that affordability has made a big factor on new neighborhoods, because as they are sold out of a particular phase or a particular set of homes, I mean, the first 10 homes sell and then the price increases.
Right.
But we've seen significant increasing over the past 8 weeks or so. Generally, every other week, we're seeing an increase of 2,000 to 5,000 each with each builder, and obviously with larger builders, that increases are a little bit heavier. But that has caused a problem to where somebody who was looking at a particular builder, a particular neighborhood, 2 months ago, now come back through and are interested in that neighborhood. Now it costs 15,000 or 20,000 more than it did a couple months back, and they just can't afford it. It doesn't make sense for them to spend that kind of money. And of course, there's a lot of factors that go into that, but demand is by far one of the biggest issues. And the fact that those same builders were not really building, not introducing new builds back probably in early March and April. So that's really caused a bigger factor when we probably wouldn't have had this huge lack of inventory had they continued moving forward. But nobody knew. So.
You're right. We didn't know where we would be facing, what we would be facing towards the middle of 2020.
Right.
With those price increases, there's a couple of things we've been hearing about 10 to 15% increase in prices around our builder community here in Northeast Florida. So that's anywhere from Fernandina all the way down to the Palm Coast area. And, some of that can be attributed to supply and demand. Part of it are some of the builders' hard costs. So lumber costs, something that builders have been tracking. Obviously, you need lumber to build houses. So that has been something that has been a big factor in adjusting these prices along the way as well. Well, when builder prices go up and there are no more homes to move into, there's no standing spec house inventory, you may turn to resale properties. So then resale property pricing goes up because we've already talked to you about how there's no inventory on the resale side week after week after week. So we start pushing those prices up to the highest part that they can go. I mean, properties that if you had said 6 months ago were selling, they would have had a completely different price bracket than where they're at now, which in turn has led to some appraisal issues along the way. So we are now starting to see the ripple down effect of what happens when supply goes down. Interest rates are kept low, builder inventory is down, then cost to build starts going up. So then pricing starts to increase. And then all of a sudden you have the financial institutions saying, whoa, 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 maybe this house is getting a little bit too expensive. How can you justify, a $30,000 to $45,000, $50,000 price increase over a mere 6-month time span for a house with an average selling price of 300,000, for instance? So,
Well, and to add to that, when we're talking about incentives from builders, because of the fact that lumber costs have gone up, there's been issues with the supply for appliances. Their
mhm,
incentives have kind of sort of starting to go away. The
right,
price is what it is. You may see some closing cost incentives, but that's pretty much it. Trying
mm,
to get materials have been a problem. So if you wanted to get blinds or a new fridge or washer and dryer, a lot of that was the easy aspects to get that from a builder, but not anymore.
right.
So you're struggling with those small little things that make a difference that could be savings for you as the buyer, but not going to come up with it.
Yeah. And, speaking of incentives have gone away, deals have gone away.
Mm.
That was another big hot topic amongst a lot of the agents in the area of really trying to set the right expectation for buyers who are coming into our market, maybe from another area of the country, or maybe people that haven't purchased homes in a while and just have, it's been 10, 15 years since they'd been in the market for a new home, and understanding that the reality is much different than maybe the last time you purchased, or maybe the city that you're moving from isn't as crazy as it is here
Right.
right now. Um, those expectations, I'm sure you've gone through it, George, where you try to tell somebody, hey, it's a good house, it's going to go quickly and it's going to go for top value. You need to put your best foot forward. You don't need to ask for every single concession, a kitchen sink, and for everybody to leave lawn equipment and pay all your closing costs, because it's probably not going to get the deal done.
Or ask for people's art. So I did see that with one of my buyers. When they were selling their house, they got asked, "We want to keep some of your pieces of art."
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
turned out to be some Target brand type of stuff that he didn't care about. So he's like, "Okay."
Sure.
But
Sure. It's kind of the wild, wild west out there. People are trying
Mhm.
to find different ways in order to get deals done. To total sidebar, but, and maybe I can find a segue in here of, what happens when you don't know where to go. We don't know. A lot of sellers would put their home on the market. They would sell if they knew that, okay, I'm going to get a buyer probably in 1 week. And then I'm going to have 45 days to find what I want to move into. And I don't want to settle. So there
Right.
have been some interesting, if you have the ability to be flexible, there have been some interesting negotiations that have happened lately. Just heard a story of a buyer had a rental property and they still had several months left on that lease, and they didn't want to break the lease, but they really wanted to buy the new home from whoever the sellers were. So the sellers didn't know where they wanted to go, so the sellers needed to rent for a little bit, so the sellers ended up taking over their new buyer's previous rental, so the buyers didn't have to break their lease, quote unquote,
Right.
and the sellers could sell their home, the buyers could move in, and the sellers had some breathing room. So, you know,
It's
you can be
a
creative.
great situation. It just worked out.
So, and it's not, I mean, obviously, you guys, that's a one off experience, but we are seeing some interesting requests out there. Sellers who want to put contingencies on their own sell. I'll sell you this house, but not until I find where I want to go. And if I can't find out where I want to go, then I want to be able to have a contingency to cancel my contract, which is rare on the selling side too. So, keep all those things in mind, when you're out there looking. Let's go back to, we last talked about appraisals. So, just keep in mind as we drive prices up, appraisers are out there looking to see, obviously they take into consideration market supply and demand. But at some point they're going to start reining that back in. Commercial. Next week, we are going to dive into some more of the national atmosphere on a lot of these topics, but George wanted to cover some of the interesting commercial tidbits that we just heard about and we just learned from, which I think you guys will find interesting as well.
Right. Well, I mean, just talking about commercial, I mean, obviously that's been a big factor here for a lot of people looking at the different commercial spaces, whether it be warehouses, residential office buildings, restaurants, all of those are having issues. But we're also seeing a lot of the restaurants in particular that were to close down because of a lack of uh, store customers and can't just live on
Okay.
25%, 50% capacity and takeout. But there are new restaurants opening up in those same spaces, redoing the space to be able to create, whether an outdoor, a little bit more spread out, kind of taking over a little bit more residential, more of the commercial space that was now vacant to be able to create that spacing that's needed. So we will see a reemergence of that commercial at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with warehouses and buildings, office buildings. The big thing that came out of that was why not look at converting a lot of those commercial spaces into residential. They're in prime locations. They're right in the middle, typically in the heart of other businesses that are needing to be, where people do have to move, walk around, and drive around to. So those make a big difference, and it's just a matter of rezoning some of those buildings. So that could make a huge difference. And the fact that we are having a huge residential inventory crisis, this is a perfect way to take some of those buildings and then convert them. So I do expect to see a lot of that, a lot of apartments converting into condos. So there will be a reemergence of commercial. It'll just be in a different capacity than what it was used previously before. And that's just the way commercial is always going to be. It's got to adapt to your current environment. And I think the commercial side of it, it may be down for a year or two, but once they can kind of figure out some of these situations, you're going to see a reemergence of that commercial business.
Yeah. It's fascinating, some of the possibilities that were thrown out there today, and it'll be really interesting to share with everybody a little bit more next week. But it is an interesting solution. With every crisis comes some sort of opportunity, and there are plenty of entrepreneurs out there who are willing to take advantage of some of the difficult situations that we've all gone through. And you can't, to your restaurant comments, you can't replicate the dining experience at home. So It is unfortunate that there are some companies, it's very unfortunate, that maybe businesses that were in existence for many, many years, family run restaurants were, a staple in a community, have now shuttered their doors. But from that, we are seeing new restaurants pop up and new ideas being born. So focusing on the positive is something that we have tried to do every single week, and really encourage everybody else to get the positivity out of the message, wherever that may be. Speaking of where do people go? So tying into the commercial piece, tying into sellers that want to sell but don't have a spot, another cool topic is vacation rentals. So next week we'll explore that a little bit more. We live in Florida. We live in a hotbed of vacation rental activity. We know that vacation rentals have struggled. There was a moratorium on being able to accept vacation rentals. And now there's a whole lot of cleaning standards in place that some people might not be able to adhere to. So they're struggling as well. But we do also know that maybe a furnished rental is an opportunity for somebody who can't sell, who doesn't want to sell because they don't know where they're going to go and they need to buy themselves some time. Corporate furnished rentals or nightly stays at, hotels get very costly. And Airbnb is one of the platforms that has specifically started to adjust its platform to hone in on some business that can be generated for the Airbnb hosts that would rather now pitch to 1 to 3 month furnished rentals, which is a really awesome opportunity to bridge the gap between, we know there are people that need a place to go in the housing situation. And we also would love to continue to support some of those small business owners that have supplemented their income with the Airbnb, HomeAway, VRBO type rental properties. So I really enjoy those types of conversations. That's something that's personally interesting to me. So bring your questions next week. We'll really look forward to answering them. We'll get more into what's happening on a national sphere, and we'll have closed out August. So we'll take a good hard look at what's happened over the summer, which is traditionally our busiest time frame. You know, May, June, July, some of August is generally when the majority of our closes happen for each year. So we'll kind of look at how those numbers have been skewed this year, what's to come now that school for all the counties in North Florida will be back in session and hopefully stay in session. We don't know, but I know that the teachers that are out there and the administrators out there have been really trying very, very hard to keep everybody safe and have a great educational environment. So whatever your choice was, we hope you guys had a great end of the summer, and we will be back next week. George, anything else I've forgotten to mention?
No, I think that was it. I mean, it's a great topic for next week. And in fact, a lot of people that did do a lot of those vacation rentals this year, I think are already looking forward to next summer. And I think it's going to change your typical summer plans. So looking forward to it.
Yep, we're going to have a lot more American city vacations. In city not being like urban city, I guess just people staying around the US, maybe not going so far from home. So lots of staycations. So we'll get into that next week. And thanks so much for joining us this week. Throw your comments below. We will be monitoring them live. And we are interested to hear from you. All right, have a great rest of your week. Bye. Bye.